Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 318 of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. In this episode, I'm honored to share the extraordinary journey of Rachel Paverman, who faced a cavernoma and multiple brain hemorrhages that turned her life upside down. At just 25 years old, Rachel underwent three brain surgeries, each more challenging than the last, leaving her with significant physical and neurological deficits. But Rachel's story is not just about survival, it's about resilience, finding purpose, and redefining life after a traumatic brain event. Join us as we explore Rachel's path to recovery, the lessons she learned, and the hope she offers to others facing similar battles. This is an episode that will leave you inspired and uplifted. Rachel Paverman, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. Tell me a little bit about what happened to you.
Yeah, so back in 2019, when I was 25 years old, I was traveling for work, a healthy 25-year-old just starting out in her career. At this time, I lived with my boyfriend. I was working a full-time events position where I traveled internationally as well as domestically, and I was doing really well in the start of my young career. I also worked in sports too, so I had a really great time doing that. And then one morning I woke up and I was having trouble swallowing. Um, and I was having other weird neurological symptoms. I couldn't hold my pen as tight or do my makeup in the morning, and I would get dizzy at random times, and I couldn't really put my finger on like what exactly was happening. So I think it took about 2 months. So this started in June, and in September of 2019, I had a MRI which showed they thought at the time that it was an aneurysm, but what it actually was something called a cavernous malformation. And it was on my brain stem, and it was about 3 centimeters. So I did have my first operation and open brain surgery on September 26th of 2019 to remove it. From there, I went to rehab and I was doing better. And then in December of 2019, early December, I had another bleed. So the cavernoma was still in fact in my brain, and they had not realized that. So I did have a second bleed at that time, which then led me to have a second surgery on December 10th to remove it. My neurosurgeon was out of the country at that time, so one of his colleagues performed the surgery. And then in the next couple of weeks, when I was in rehab, I had further decline to the point where I wasn't able to talk or sit up on my own or walk or hear or see anything. So I was in the process of having a feeding tube put in, and they called for an emergency surgery for me. I was just declining so quickly. And at that time, they went through a different site. So they went through the back of my brain, and from that, they realized that the cavernoma was still there, and it had exploded in my brainstem. So I had hydrocephalus and all these other things going on, and I was left with a multitude of deficits. But on December 30th, that was my third surgery, and I spent about 2 months in rehab. Um, but I had my third surgery at that point, and at that point, it was fully removed. So I'm not left
The
with a cavernoma any longer, but I'm left with a bunch of deficits.
The obvious question is, how did they miss it two times? What is that even a thing? Like what went on there? Do you I don't even know how to say it. Like I have they've been able to explain that.
Yeah, so the thing is, like, with cavernomas, I was afraid at the time to do research, which is kind of stupid on my part. I was really just trusting my surgeon. He was the chief of neurosurgery at the hospital that I was at. So I knew that he was a great surgeon, but what I didn't realize was that he wasn't a CCM Cavernoma specialist. He was just a great neurosurgeon. So I think like what really had happened was the brainstem is such a delicate area that he had explained to me that you can't just move things around and try to find what you're looking for because it's so sensitive. So they took out what they thought was all of it, and they just kept missing the whole thing.
Right. Okay. So they kept missing the whole thing, and then they were reporting that they had done the job.
I'm sorry.
Were they reporting that they had done the job? It
Yeah,
was
they
successful.
they believed that they had got the whole thing. But I think what happened was after my second surgery, my surgeon was out of the country. So I think that they were just trying to stabilize me and hope that they would have gotten it all. But the guy that was really supposed to be getting it wasn't around. So I think if he was around, I might have avoided a third surgery, but he
Mm,
was actually out of the country speaking at a conference about my case, ironically. So
right.
he wasn't there. And I think I could have avoided a third surgery if he was, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Yep. So now you're dealing with what the outcome of that third surgery was. So did you have deficits when you woke up from the second surgery, or did they come on as the cavernoma started to play up?
Yeah, so I did have some deficits, but nothing to the extent of what I currently have. So what led me to have my second surgery, I had a bleed and the bleed happened overnight. And what happened when I woke up was I was completely paralyzed on my right side. So I wasn't able to move my arm or my leg. To this day, I'm still not able to have feeling like on that side or anything. Um, so that was kind of the alarm that went off that made everyone realize I think you need another surgery. Um, and yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I was having some issues swallowing as well. But I think the main thing was the fact that I had lost like all abilities to move half of my body.
How long did you spend in hospital after that third surgery, Rachel?
So after the third surgery, I would say I spent about 8 to 10 days in the ICU, and then I was moved to a step down unit. And then from there, I was transferred to an inpatient rehab facility, and I spent about a month and a half there. So I was in the hospital until the end of February.
And then when you went home, what challenges did you experience physically?
Yeah, so I was released from the hospital on February 22nd, and the COVID pandemic started on March 16th or 17th. So I had just started in rehab, and I was so early on in my recovery that I really didn't know what to do on my own. And shortly after I started at therapy, my therapy had shut down because of the pandemic. So I was really left on my own with my mom and my stepdad, and we were kind of just figuring it out on our own. At this time, I lived with my boyfriend at the time, but I moved out and moved in with my mom because he was still working, and I was really afraid. So fresh out of surgery to be exposed to COVID at the time, it was such a scary thing. So
Yeah, you've just had all these interventions, and then you've come home and you need to repair and recover and heal, and you're hearing about COVID, and we don't know anything about it, and it's pretty dramatic.
yeah, Yeah, it's funny. I actually thought it was so crazy to me that I had brain surgery, and then it was so crazy to me that COVID shut the whole world down that I got out of the hospital and I'm like, is this real life? Like, am I dreaming? Like, this is so crazy. Like, everything was just so bizarre to me. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it.
If you've had a stroke and you're in recovery, you'll know what a scary and confusing time it can be. You're likely to have a lot of questions going through your mind. Like, how long will it take to recover? Will I actually recover? What things should I avoid in case I make matters worse? Doctors will explain things, but obviously you've never had a stroke before. You probably don't know what questions to ask. If this is you, you may be missing out on doing things that could help speed up your recovery. If you're finding yourself in that situation, stop worrying and head to recoveryafterstroke.com, where you can download a guide that will help you. It's called 7 Questions to Ask Your Doctor About Your Stroke. These 7 questions are the ones Bill wished he'd asked when he was recovering from a stroke. They'll not only help you better understand your condition, they'll help you take a more active role in your recovery. Head to the website now, recoveryafterstroke.com, and download the guide. It's free.
Your 25-year-old self has kind of crossed that threshold where you realized you were unwell and you're going through all this stuff to try and heal your brain and trying to get that particular blood vessel, the cavernous malformation, out of there. Before that event, what was life like? How did you go about day-to-day life? And were there any signs or symptoms that you look back on now and think, oh, maybe that was giving me some uh, information about something I didn't know was in my head?
Yeah, definitely. All my life, I was always told by doctors that I was in the gray area. I was told I had Crohn's disease. I didn't have it. I was told I had fibromyalgia. I was told that I had like hypothyroidism, and I all my life I was just always in the gray area, and I never could figure out what was the root cause of me not feeling well. So for me, a lot of the symptoms that I had were gastrointestinal. I had so many issues with my stomach, and I don't know if it's because I was anxious because my brain wasn't right and something was off in my brain. But I also remember, like, over the years, so for as long as I can remember, I would always have like these random dizzy spells, and I've had them forever. So for me, I didn't know that it wasn't normal to experience that until the cavernoma was taken out, and I realized, like, okay, that's not really something that should have been happening, but I didn't really know any different. And then my surgeon also told me that it's something that I was born with, and then it was likely just growing over the years. And then when I did finally get to figure out what it was and that I had this in my brain, I had already experienced like I think it was 2 bleeds at that time. So my surgeon said that he can tell by the color of blood to see how many bleeds that I had experienced. And by the time it was removed, I think they said that I had a total of like 5 bleeds. So yeah, so I definitely had some prior to discovering it, which I think I might have an idea as to when those happened. And I think that one of them was when I woke up and had issues swallowing, but I'm not quite sure when the other one was.
Right. Okay. That's interesting, right? So waking up and not being able to swallow. What did you think that you just forgot to swallow or you didn't know how or there was something wrong with your throat?
Yeah, it's the craziest. I can't even explain. Like it's not that I couldn't. swallow. I knew how to swallow. I just like my brain wasn't communicating with my body to tell me to swallow. So I knew I had water in my mouth. I knew how to swallow it, but when I went to swallow it, my brain just like they felt like there was just a block on my brain that wouldn't let me do it. It was really scary, and I was brushed off by a lot of people who thought, "Oh, you're fine. It's just your anxiety. Like you should go see a therapist." So I started doing therapy. I went to my primary care physician, and she told me that she would do scans on my throat to see if maybe I had something going on in my throat or something. So nobody was looking at my brain as a cause; they were looking at everything else.
Yeah. Which kind of makes sense that they wouldn't think of the brain because there could be a number of other issues. You know, your age is an issue. They look at you and they say, "Well, she's very young. She's probably doing something crazy, or who knows what." How long did it last for, the not being able to swallow though? And also, did that mean that you didn't eat food as well?
So it started in June, and then I didn't get my diagnosis until September. So it wasn't too long, but I didn't ever have an issue where I wasn't able to eat, but I would cough a lot when I was trying to like sip on water. It would just like slip down my throat before I could swallow it. And then with food, I just had to eat very slow because I it took a while for my brain to connect to understand that I needed to swallow it.
Yeah. So what's life like now? How do you go about life? How have you adjusted to your body? What are the
Yeah,
things that you do to occupy your time with?
of course. So I'm almost 5 years out. In September, it will be 5 years. So I'm currently still doing physical therapy 3 days a week, occupational therapy 2 days a week. And I published a memoir. So a couple years out, I wrote down all of the memories that I have of my surgery during COVID, and then I spent a lot of time editing it and just going through that and creating journal entries to add on. And I published a memoir in 2022. Some of the things that I love enjoying now, which are a little bit different from what I was able to do in the past. But I always love working out. So I have a bike at home, so I do that, and I do adaptive CrossFit. I love listening to audiobooks and podcasts. I love going to parks and cooking. And then something else that I've been doing is the organization that works closely with cavernous malformation is called Alliance to Cure Cavernous Malformation. So I've been volunteering with them, and it's changed my life to say the least. It's been absolutely amazing to me. It's an organization that is for those that are affected by cavernous malformation, and they just bring research, community support, and multiple resources for the community and everyone affected by CCM. So it's a cause that's very close to my heart, and although I don't have a cavernous malformation in my brain anymore, I think that it's so important to just create a future that could be CCM free for the future generations that are dealing with the genetic type, or if they have a type like I had that's sporadic that wasn't able to be operated on. So my mission in myself is to just make sure that there's hope for the future and make people see that being positive can really affect like the way they recover and the way that they see things. And Also, the Alliance to Cure is they introduced me to the company that I now work for. So I work for a company called Ovid Therapeutics, and they are a biopharmaceutical company. And what they're doing is looking to find a cure for CCM. And they took me on early in the year, and I've been working with them doing a lot of like social media, internal events, as well as branding. And I'm just so happy to be a part of the team and kind of just work closely with them to help them meet their goals. And my goals are aligning with their goals. So it's really just a great match. And I'm so happy to be working there and kind of back in the workforce again.
Just a quick break, and we'll be right back with Sunny's incredible journey. But first, I wanted to take a moment to talk about something that's been a big part of my own recovery journey, and that is my book, The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. In it, I share my personal story and that of 9 other stroke survivors who have turned their challenges into opportunities for growth. If you're looking for inspiration and guidance on your path to recovery, this book is for you. To get your copy, just visit Amazon or visit recoveryafterstroke.com/book. What was it about volunteering that was important? Before you knew all the benefits of it, you decided that you'll volunteer. Why did you make that decision?
Yeah, so I made that decision because I was always so interested in my job and what I did in my career, and I spent a few years trying to figure out what my purpose was, and I was really focused on recovering. And I'm at the point now where I wanted to get back into the workforce slowly. So they really helped me integrate back into the workforce and use my brain in different ways than I was used to working. So it was a really great stepping stone for me. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity and do still have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So I volunteered as well about a year after I became unwell. I still had the arteriovenous malformation in my head for a few more years after that. Uh, at the Stroke Foundation, and it was really good to volunteer to do something for somebody else. And then I met other people there that were like me. And that's kind of the first time I started to get involved with a community around stroke. And everyone was um, injured in their own unique way from stroke. And it didn't, and it kind of, I met people that I felt like knew what it was like to be me and vice versa.
Yeah.
And it was
It's so
something.
important in community. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool place to find community, and immediately people understand you. Immediately people know what you're going through, what's happened, and it's a very interesting, unique experience to go from nobody knows what I'm going through. I don't know how to explain it to people. Nobody gets me. Everyone misunderstands me. To immediately being understood and immediately people empathizing with your situation.
Yeah,
So
I totally understand that. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that the community is such an important part of recovery and just having people that relate to you. It's just like an indescribable bond that you can't really experience with people that you've known your whole life that might not know like what you're going through. So I totally agree with that.
you seem like you've taken all of this stuff in your stride just by the short conversation that we've had so far. But was it really hard to wake up and discover that a lot of your body has been impacted negatively?
Um, it was definitely a tough pill to swallow at first. And I think that there are days that I still do struggle with that. I think that it's only normal to have like good days and bad days. I just try to stay as positive as I can be. because I feel like that's the only thing I can do. Like, there's only so much that you have control over. And I think that if that's something that I can control, I want to control that. And yes, it's tough that, I was 25 and active and traveling and hiking and snowboarding and stuff. And I can't do that now, but I'm just very grateful to be alive because it could have ended a very different way. And I just have to remember to be grateful for that every day.
Let's talk about your memoir a little. Do you have a copy there by any chance?
I do, yes.
Just hold it up to the camera.
This is my memoir. It's called To the Abyss.
Yep. And give me an idea of what the chapters are about, what's in there.
Yeah, so it's really a book it's very heavy content, but I try to make it as light as it can be. I
That's
what
quite
so
the
what I did
task.
was like
Is that your first book?
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And I was never a writer prior.
So
Yeah,
not only are you not a writer and it's your first book, you also have to write about some of the heaviest content that you could possibly write about. And your
exactly.
thoughts are on the reader. It's to kind of try and make it easy for them to read. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of feedback that says that I did a good job at trying to make it easy for people to read. A lot of people have told me like it's a book they just couldn't put down because they just want to know like what happened next. So it's basically just a recollection of what I remembered from life prior to my cavernoma, life during the discovery of my cavernoma and my surgeries. Because I do, even when I was at the point where I wasn't able to talk, I still have very vivid memories of what went on. That part of my brain wasn't affected. So there would be times when I wasn't able to speak, but I knew exactly what was happening. So I wrote that all down, and then the end of the book is just journal entries for about a year. So I did that, and it's just documenting like what the early stages of life were like for me after I had all of the surgeries and stuff.
Why did you decide to write the book?
So what really inspired me to write a book is that my mom used to sit with me in the ICU, and I used to not be able to see anything. So she would get memoirs from other people who had brain injuries and just read them to me. So that's really what inspired me. There was one specific author that had her surgery somewhere close to where I lived, and then she had her rehab experience at the same hospital that I had it at. So I was really inspired by her story.
Why is it important to read other people's books and to get an understanding of other stories about stroke recovery? Now, you're you've written the book X amount of years out after the stroke, right? Um, what are you trying to do? How are you trying to use that book? What's the point of it?
The point of my book is to really just inspire other people and show other people, especially the CCM community, that anything is possible and just be positive and try to put your best foot forward every day. And what we're going through is definitely difficult, and I can understand that, and I just want other people to know that it's okay and that I understand there's other people that understand, and there's something good on the other side of it.
Right. Some people, so you may know that I've read in the book The Unexpected Way That a Stroke Became the Best Thing That Happened. It's basically describing that there's some good things that come at the end of it afterwards. And it comes through personal growth and by doing certain things that help improve your condition. Don't matter how bad your situation is, you can always improve your condition somehow. And it's really that it's about telling people that down the road, when you reflect back, there might be some personal growth there, some opportunities that came up as a result of your experience that you never imagined were possible. Is that your experience? All these are there things that you reflect on that seemed really terrible at the time, but looking back, uh, there are some silver linings and some awesome opportunities that have appeared?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was just saying to someone yesterday, obviously what happened to me was very terrible, but I lost my ability to drive, and a silver lining is that I see my parents a lot more now. I was never not close with them, but I see them a lot more frequently now than I used to, and it's made us closer. I've also got closer with my sister, and I've also been, just I've been given opportunities that have only come about because I've went through what I've went through, and I experienced sort of experience, and I just life is just like different for me now.
Yeah. What are some of the major challenges that still trying to overcome right now?
For me, I would say the biggest challenge is accessibility. So I use a walker and I also use a wheelchair depending on what I'm doing or where I am. And I think like I actually listened to a podcast recently, and someone made a very good point that if you're disabled, like we're not living in a disabled world. So we're trying to navigate in a world of people who aren't really, I mean, the world isn't accommodating always to people with disabilities. If you never experienced that, I don't think you'd like realize it, but because I don't think I did, but now that I'm living in that world, I see, is there push plates to get in all the doors? Is there ramps? Is there grab bars in the bathrooms? And I'm finding that there are in some places, but overall, I would say no, and it's really unfortunate. And I think that maybe it's something that eventually the world can change in the future. But as of right now, that's something I really struggle with.
You struggle with it physically, obviously navigating the obstacles, but you also struggle with it emotionally and mentally.
I do. So I see a therapist, and he's definitely helped me a lot. But I think like the one thing that I really struggle to move past is the fact that like my life is so different now. And I just I think that like my life before, I always say like I don't know who that version of Rachel is anymore. I don't even remember like what it's like to get in my car and go get a cup of coffee, or just be able to do like what I want on my own time. Um, I I depend on a lot of other people for things that I used to be able to do on my own. So that's something I think mentally that I struggle with the most.
Where do you live? Which part of the United States?
I live in New Jersey.
And what's it like navigating the sidewalks and the roads and all that kind of stuff with a wheelchair?
So it really depends on the town. And I think for the most part, I have an okay time doing that. But I said earlier, I like to go to parks, and the issue with that is that there aren't a lot of accessible parks. And I found a few, and those are the ones that I frequent and visit most often. But I struggle with like I guess like I've had surgeries in New York City, and there's no way that I could live in New York City. I feel like the roads there and the sidewalks are so difficult and uneven, and um but here in New Jersey, I think like the parks and stuff, I'm trying to find places where I can go to enjoy. I struggle with more so than I guess like the sidewalks in the area.
Yeah. Many years ago, we traveled to Athens in Greece, and it was just after my first brain bleed. When I say just after, it was about 9 months, 10 months after my first brain bleed, and my condition still wasn't resolved. But of course, I had the opportunity to understand what it was like to have a brain injury and a condition that made life quite difficult at the time. And I remember trying to walk on their particular footpaths, what we call footpaths, you guys call sidewalks, and they don't really have anything that's useful uh, to actually walk on. I mean, it's so terrible. The condition of the paths in the city of Athens, most normal, able bodied people wouldn't be able to navigate them properly because they're so narrow. They don't fit a number of people in there. Some of them have steps from the buildings, um, decreasing the space that people have to walk on. Some of them have trees in the middle of the path, and they're made out of what is now very shiny marble that maybe wasn't very shiny back in the day when they first built it. So they're very slippery. So in the rain, they're really treacherous to navigate. And when we were there in 2013, my cousin has an injury to one of her legs. And as a result, she can't walk um, the way that able bodied people can walk. She really relies on steady ground, uh, a good surface with grip, etc. And she took us out into the city, and just helping her get to and from the car and the destination that we were going to was quite a task because you could tell she was concerned about finding her feet the entire time. Like every step was a safe step for her to take. And then at one point, she slipped and fell, and she fractured her other leg.
Oh
And it
no.
was such a terrible example of how inaccessible a lot of places are. Now, where we live in Melbourne, in Australia, it's very accessible in that they've put a lot of time and thought into the roads and the paths and how people might navigate a path. Most paths are quite wide. Two people could easily walk on a path going either direction or even next to each other. And then they've got those little, in the curbs, they've got those little ramps that go down one curb and up the other curb. So if you had a wheelchair, you could easily roll down the curb, and then you can go up the next one. And they're not that steep at all. They're very well maintained. And one of the things that they're trying to do now is make public transport more accessible. So when you go to a train station, anybody in a wheelchair should be able to just drive straight into the train and park in a spot that's been allocated for people with wheelchairs. And also, we've got a tram system here, and they're sort of lagging behind in that area of getting the trams to the right state where people can also drive up and enter the tram in exactly the same way that they would a train. So there's only in the particular area that we live, the tram line is missing um, some platforms at certain stops. And even that, when I look at it and I think about somebody in a wheelchair trying to get, say, to the central business district from our area, and if they can't get to the train station and they go by tram, they have to get to a tram that's further, to a stop that's further away, perhaps from where they live or where they want to go. And if you have to do that in the rain, that's really uncomfortable. If you have to
Yeah.
do it in cold weather, it's uncomfortable. In hot weather, it's really uncomfortable. It makes the effort that somebody in a wheelchair has to put in way more effort. They require way more effort to get the same outcome that
Right.
other people would. Have
Right.
you ever found yourself in a situation where you're in the wheelchair and you're stranded, or you've been impacted by the weather, and then that's kind of ruined your intention to go to a particular place?
Well, it's not weather related, but something comes to mind that actually happened yesterday. I was at a venue for a sporting event, and there was supposed to be a ramp that or a lift that brought you up the steps. You go on the wheelchair, and then it brings you up the steps. It's like automatic, and it wasn't working, so I wasn't available. It wasn't available for me to use with a wheelchair. So the security guard was like, "Oh, can you walk? Like, are you able to walk?" And I'm like, "I mean, I said, yeah, but I can walk, but do I have to?" Like, and it was only a few steps up, which was fine, and I had no problem doing it because I'm able to. But I really felt for people who could have been there that day that were in a wheelchair that weren't able to walk, and what would happen then, so um it's just interesting to see, like, when you're somebody that's in a wheelchair that needs that type of help. It's hard for people who don't understand that to, like, relate to it and understand, like, why those things are so important. And um yeah, I think too. I went to a wedding a few months ago, and the venue was not very accessible, and um the reasoning behind that was because they said it was a historical venue, so that way they were grandfathered in. And I had a family member that um was in a wheelchair, and she really struggled to get around also. So for me, I was in a wheelchair, but I'm able to walk and get around and get through those difficult situations. But there are people that can't, and it's just really sad sometimes to see, like, how the world is, and people don't always understand that, and they're not always empathetic to that.
Yeah. They're not willing to help out because they don't understand how important it is to go down that path and help somebody in a situation like that. Um,
Right.
when a historical building is the excuse, does that mean that they are not allowed to interfere with that historical building, or or they have an exemption from making it accessible?
I'm I'm not actually sure, but I think when we were told that, I believe that it was because they were grandfathered in, so that way they didn't feel like they needed to make it accessible because they had gotten away with it not being accessible, and they wouldn't get in trouble for that. But I can't really speak on it because I'm not exactly sure. But that's kind of what I was taking away from it.
Yep, fair enough. I also noticed your one of your lenses on your glasses is what do we call it?
It's fogged out, yeah.
It's fogged out. So
Yep.
what does that help you deal with?
So after my surgeries, I had a Tarsorrhaphy. So they had essentially stitched my eyes shut because I don't produce tears and I don't blink. So it
On that
was just
side?
basically on there to protect it. And then I had that on for about 2 years, and they opened my eye up, but I now experience double vision. So when I blur out one side of my glasses, it helps relieve the double vision and rest my eyes a little bit because I also have nystagmus. So my eyes are also bouncing up and down like a basketball all the time. So that mixed with seeing double of everything is very exhausting. So I use these when I'm on the computer or on my sunglasses to kind of help make it a little bit easier on my eyes.
When you say it's exhausting, is it physically exhausting?
I honestly, I think it's mentally exhausting. It's so hard for me, like when I'm having a conversation with somebody, to focus on their eyes, and there's bright lights and my eyes are moving around, so there's just a lot going on in my head. So when my eyes aren't right, it kind of just like adds to that. So for me, I think it's more mentally exhausting, but it's also physically exhausting, like at the end of the day.
Yeah. When you say mentally exhausting, it's not psychologically exhausting, although that could also impact people. I get that. Like it exhausts your brain, right? Is that what you
Totally.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too, I was telling someone recently at supermarkets, I don't know if you experience this, the lights are just
So
so
bright.
like fluorescent.
Yeah.
And I actually just heard that the reason behind that is because it makes the all the fruits and vegetables look fresher. So I, because whenever I'm in like Walmart or food shopping, I have to wear sunglasses because
Hmm.
it's so bright, and it really just like hurts my head, and there's just so much like stimulation happening between that and trying to look at the shelves and everything on the shelves. So yeah.
I'm sitting here in front of a light that's right there and one to the left of me, and they're fluorescent in color. They're sort of bright white. And it's important for having a decent image uh, when I record. And it's so tiring. Like the 1 hour podcast episode that I sit here, I get through them and I'm kind of used to it. And as soon as it's done, the lights are off and I'm outside trying to recover. But it is so tiring. And I would love to use sunglasses on a podcast interview if I could. I never have, but it would be great.
Yeah,
But I
you
do,
should.
yeah, I should, but it doesn't make a for a good visual. And it's only
Yeah,
an hour. It's only an hour. Like it's temporary, and
right.
it's not every day. But I do also struggle with lights that are fluorescent in shopping centers or stores or offices or anywhere where I go. And at our house, the lights go off. There's no lights on above my head. So if I'm sitting, unless we're sitting and eating dinner, which is necessary to have some lighting above the head, that's all good. But if we're sitting down, just chilling out, watching TV, the lights might be on in other parts of the room, further away. But next to me, there'll be a lamp that's got a really warm glow light globe so that I don't have to deal with lights like that. And in our bedroom, I've got this little battery operated string lights. You know, they've got little LEDs on them. You can buy them at the hardware store. And
Mm,
they're really designed for, uh, they're called like fairy lights. They're really designed for events. You know, you put them in the backyard when you're having a nighttime event and they make pretty little light features. And I use those as my night light so that it's nice and dim. It just creates enough light so it's not dark, but it doesn't stimulate my head just before I
right,
go to bed. And
right.
in the evenings, if I wake up and go to the toilet, I try and do it in the dark. I try not to switch on any lights
Me too.
because,
I do the same thing. That's so funny.
yeah, right. Okay. So that's got to be a thing that heaps of people do. Because if I open the lights, if I switch the lights on, then I wake up and then it's impossible to get back to bed. And then I'm not
I have the
rested.
same issue. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've really got good at navigating my house at night in the dark, um, and getting little jobs like that done in the middle of the night, and even getting some water. I try to make sure that I don't switch on any of the lights. It's just not worth it.
Right.
They have a really
Yeah,
massive
I
impact on the
experienced
brain.
the same thing. The only problem is that the lights are off and I'm on the toilet or something, and my vision is so bad that I think like there's someone from like the corner of my eye. I'm like paranoid. I'm like, oh my god, I think someone's like in my apartment like every night, and it's obviously never the case. But my eyes are so bad, or it's my brain, and it's like tricking me into thinking something's there when it's not.
Yeah. You have to rely on your ears for that then. Did you get any impact on your ear on that side as well?
Oh yeah, so actually I forgot to mention after my first surgery to access the cavernoma, they had to cut through the surgical site is behind my left ear, and to access my brainstem, they had to cut my hearing nerve. So I have total hearing loss in my left ear. And that was a result of my surgery rather than the bleed.
Uh-huh. Okay. So that side is definitely impacted really heavily. And perhaps part of the reason why your book is so heavy, do you go into detail, like describing the kind of challenges that you are facing with regards to your body in the book?
Well, the problem is that like early on in my recovery, I was very like sheltered, and because COVID was happening, I wasn't in the community so much, but I didn't write about that in my book so much. But as I'm back in the world now and experiencing life every day, I'm realizing how much of an issue having no hearing really is. And I don't know if it's because I have trauma to my brain and I have trouble processing sounds, or if it's because I truly like can't hear. But if I'm in a setting where there's multiple conversations happening at once, like there is absolutely no shot that I would be able to hear you. And it's something that I've struggled with, like almost more so than some of the other deficits, just because it's really hard to be social and to be myself when I'm not able to hear, and I'm embarrassed that I'm going to say something that's not the correct answer because I didn't hear correctly. So I tend to stay quiet when I'm out. And that's mostly due to the fact that I have trouble hearing.
Uh-huh. Okay. So that's a common thing. Like I hear about a lot of stroke survivors who say that they struggle with conversations, even if they haven't got hearing loss. The multiple streams of information makes it really tiring for the brain and really hard for them to keep track of multiple conversations. And they often take a step back in those situations. Do you feel like you take a step back because what is it like? It wouldn't be embarrassing, would it, if you said the wrong thing or gave the wrong answer to a question that you didn't hear properly? People mostly understand, don't they? Isn't it kind of okay? Or like, are you just, what is it? Is it a confidence thing? Is it a,
I'm not exactly sure like what it is, but I think part of it is the fact that like I don't always speak up for myself, and I don't always tell people, "Hey, I don't have hearing in this eye, so like I may not always understand you." And
uh,
it's really hard sometimes to be so I have a boyfriend now, and we go out a lot, and if we're trying to be social around other people, like, I'm very particular about like where I feel comfortable being, um, and who I'm comfortable being around. Like if I'm meeting new people, I would much rather meet them in the quiet of my house rather than out at like a loud restaurant in the evening. But if I do know you and you know my situation and you know that it's hard for me to hear, then I'm totally fine with being in a loud setting. But if I'm first meeting you, I'd really like to make like an impression for people to see like the real me and not the me be out and not able to hear much.
I hear you. Okay, so that's pretty smart actually. That gets you kind of gets you feeling good about the encounter in the first place. You can build rapport with that person. You can get to know them. They can get to know you instead of being in a public place where you've met somebody and then having to tell them, I can't see properly from this eye or I can't hear from this ear and go through all of the rundown on all of the things that you can't do. Most people
Right.
wouldn't know how to react to all of that anyway, but I like that picking your location. That's a really good way to overcome some of
Yeah,
that stuff.
I just want people to see my personality and
Yeah.
see who I am as a person. Like I would like to say that I'm pretty outgoing, but if I'm in a public setting, like there's a lot of times when I don't show that I'm outgoing because I'm just so timid because I'm afraid of what to say or not being able to hear or having awkwardness when I say what 10 times in a row.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's created a lot of like social anxiety for me, I think. Like part of it is COVID, but also part of it is the fact that I have trouble hearing.
Yeah. Look, I think you're overthinking it, but it's also good to protect yourself in that way. If you feel like you need to kind of step back, there's nothing wrong with that as well. You don't always have to be outgoing. You don't always have to be the life of the party. You can take a step back and be somebody who just sort of observes and listens rather than totally gets involved. There's no issue with that. Um,
Right.
but if it's a but if you're overthinking it and you're kind of getting in your own way, that's something to consider as well. Like if most people aren't, if you're in a place where you know most people, no one's going to really take it the wrong way if you have to say, what did you say or what was that about? But I get you trying to avoid the difficulty of a conversation that normally would flow, and then it kind of gets interrupted by all of the whats and the I didn't hear that or can you repeat that?
Right. It's actually it's very interesting that you say that you know people who don't have hearing loss, but they have traumas to their brain and they have issues with processing. I always thought that it was just my hearing, but I recently started thinking that it might be like my processing as well. I had neuropsychology testing done and it showed that I have trouble processing. So I think that's just exactly what it is that it's hard for my brain to decipher like one sound from another and process it to hear it.
Yeah. I remember going to parties when I was first diagnosed and had a whole bunch of neurological issues. I remember going to parties and telling my wife, like, we need to go home. It's 9:30. I need to get out of here. I can't be here anymore. I'm struggling. And I was struggling with the music, the lights, the multiple people talking to me. It was physically and emotionally exhausting. And the best place for me was to not be there. So I would just go in, apologize, or thank the person for the invitation and for having me there, etc. And then I would just get out of there. And it was self preservation. So it's really important to do that and not feel bad about it. If um,
Yeah,
if you have to get out of a difficult situation when your senses are overwhelmed. I mean, it's really important to just go, I've had enough. Or to do what you did, which is what I started doing later, which was you just turn up and then you don't participate too much, but you're there and you're
right,
experiencing the party and you're with the people, but you're kind of sitting in the dark corner where not too many people are around you on a chair where no one else is going to sit next to you. Like I did that a lot as well. And that got me past 9:30. So that might have got me to 10:30 or 11, which meant that my wife could appreciate being out and about and catching up with people. But also I didn't have to run out of battery by 9:30.
right. Yeah, I think that's something I struggle with too. I my social battery is so it drains so fast, like maybe an hour, and I'm so tired. So I definitely understand that also. And I think that I need to do a better job myself of like listening to my body sometimes and um not always being a people pleaser, which I
Mm,
tend to do that a lot, and not be selfish, but be selfish and listen to my body more.
yeah, it's important. Uh, what's the hardest thing about this whole situation for you? What do you feel like has been the hardest thing that you've had to navigate?
Definitely the fact that um I lost the old version of me. I lost my old life. And not to say that's not it's my life is great now, and I love everything that I'm doing in my life. I love where I am in my life right now, but it's just really sad sometimes to like look back at old photos of myself, or I used to play soccer, so um thinking about me playing soccer and reminiscing with my friends, and just knowing that like I will never be able to play soccer again or do some of the things that I used to do. So for me, that's the hardest, and I know that um, my life is great now, and it's just different. But it can definitely be hard to deal with that sometimes.
Yeah. Have you seen some of those Paralympians that play those crazy wheelchair sports?
I have seen that actually. My CrossFit coach also told me about they have like adaptive skiing, and she went to Colorado, and she volunteered to like help with that. So and I've seen like adaptive like ice hockey and other things like that, which is so awesome.
Adaptive ice hockey would be good. You could still go onto the ice, have a fight with everybody, and feel quite normal, skate on and skate
Yeah,
off, however they do it. It would be really cool.
yeah, yeah. I will say like the world, as much as I said before that it's not accessible, they're also like super inclusive with some of the programs that they have out there for the disabled community.
Yeah. It's getting better. I know there's a lot of work to do, but it is getting better. I see it every day because, like you, I pay attention to these things, and it's always awesome to see people participating in. Well, those really competitive people that they need to win and succeed at everything that they do. It doesn't matter whether they're missing legs or arms or whatever, but they just need to be in competition somewhere. And I feel like there's a lot more opportunities for people like that to find leagues where they can be competitive and get that out of their system at least and feel accomplished or defeated really badly and then get back up and play the next game and see what they can do. Um, and that helps create a community as well, right? A sporting community that is about sport and their passion, um, but has but that allows for people with other conditions to attend and
Yeah,
to get all the benefits from it, right? It's really important to get the benefits from being able to attend to things. So I am liking where things are heading, but of course, um, there is a long way to go in most countries. Most definitely. What is something that this whole experience has taught you?
I think it's taught me to be grateful and to appreciate the little things in life, because for a while I wasn't able to hold a fork or brush my teeth, or I'm still learning how to write because the right side of my body was what was affected, and I was a righty. So I'm now learning how to live life with my left hand. So just little things like being grateful to shower, and like I used to have help in the shower, and now I'm able to stand with the grab bar, but those are things that I now appreciate so much more, and just like being able to take a beautiful day for what it is and enjoy the sunshine and be able to go on my like stationary bike and just like live a somewhat independent life, and just have so much appreciation for it.
There are people listening that are on similar journeys to you and I, going through their own stuff. What is something that you would like to tell them about this time and the challenges that they have?
I think that what I would tell them is to just be patient with your body, and um, it doesn't happen overnight. Like we all know, brain injuries take forever. I'm 5 years out, and I'm still seeing improvements every day. And sometimes I plateau, but I always continue like moving forward and just be positive because I don't. The vagus nerve connects the mind and the body, and it's so important to have good mindset when you're physically recovering, and just like taking care of yourself and eating good foods and really just being patient with yourself is the main thing because it's a slow process, but it's a process that always you'll always be improving. You know, for whether it's a slow improvement or a fast improvement, or if you plateau a little bit, you're always going to be improving.
Your book is called?
My book is called To the Abyss. It's available on Amazon. And then I also have a website.
Yep. Well, tell us about the website. By the way, anyone watching and listening, they'll be able to go to the show notes to get links to Rachel's socials and the website and the Amazon book. Just go to recoveryafterstroke.com/episodes and you'll find Rachel's episode there. But anyhow, tell us the website link.
Yeah, so my website is just my first and last name. So www.rachelpaverman.com. And on there it's just a little bit about my story, and then a link to purchase the book, as well as some photos of while I was like in the hospital and early on in my recovery when I was writing the book, as well as I have a tab called in the media and in the alliance as well. So it gives a little information about the organization that's very close to my heart, and then in the media is just some of the stuff that I've done and other podcasts and like book chats and stuff.
Excellent. Rachel, I really appreciate you reaching out. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story.
Of
Congratulations
course.
on your recovery so far. You're doing an awesome job. I love the way you're going about it. I look forward to hearing about all the amazing things that you continue to achieve down the track.
Thank you so much. It was so great to meet you.
That's a wrap for another episode. I hope you found Rachel Paverman's journey through cavernoma and brain hemorrhage as powerful and inspiring as I did. A huge thank you to everyone who has already left a review. It does mean the world to me. Your feedback is crucial for the podcast's success, helping others discover this valuable content and making their stroke recovery journey a bit easier. If you haven't left a review, please consider giving a 5-star rating and sharing what the show means to you on iTunes and Spotify. For those of you watching on YouTube, remember to leave a comment below, like the episode, and subscribe to the show to get notifications of future episodes. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting the podcast by subscribing to our Patreon page at patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. Your support allows us to continue sharing these vital stories and keep the podcast available to all stroke survivors. If you are a stroke survivor with a story to share, now is the perfect time to join me on the show. The interviews are unscripted and you do not need to prepare for them. Just be yourself and share your experience to help others in similar situations. If you have a commercial product that supports stroke survivors in their recovery, you can join me on a sponsored episode of the show. Simply visit recoveryafterstroke.com/contact, Fill out the contact form with your category, and I'll get back to you with details on how we can connect via Zoom. Thanks again for being here and listening. I deeply appreciate you. Your support means everything to me. See you on the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gassiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.